little while ago I posted a video on how to bleed your baseboard hot water system, and it followed my plumber as he bled my system over here. I have a 2-zone system, and it followed how he bled from the upstairs and the downstairs. But what I didn't go into is how many times he had to come over every winter to bleed my system and the reason why. And it all came down to this right here. If you have it on your system, it's called a SuperVent, and it's made by Honeywell. And what it does is the water comes from the boiler up the line, comes over to the SuperVent where it's goes through a screen. It's agitated right here. The air rises up here, and there's a float that sits right here. And as more air comes up, the float goes down and it opens up. There's a little needle, and here's where the valve is. There's a little needle that sits with the float. As the float goes down, the needle bends down, opens up the valve and lets the air out, and then water rises up, and of course the float goes up and the needle is flat like this, and it shuts the valve off. It's a great system. The problem is the float can go bad, and when the float goes bad, it sinks, it cracks, and the water actually, it just sits down in the water instead of on top of the water. And because of that, the valve just sits open, air gets sucked into the system, and that's why I was constantly bleeding my system. And it's all you got to do is replace this top part. It's a rebuild kit. It's like $35. It just unscrews. Take you 2 seconds. You put on the new top with the new float, the new needle, the new valve. Just screw it right back on. And of course, the system bled itself, which is what this is designed to do, bleed the air out of the system. And everything was great. It only took about maybe a day to entirely bleed all the air out of the system, and I haven't had a problem since. Now, in order to replace this, the whole system is under pressure. So you need to isolate this. Starting here at the expansion tank, I turn this valve. This is the inlet line. I shut this off. I shut these 2 valves off, one zone for the downstairs, one zone for the upstairs. Over on this side, I shut this off, which comes from the boiler. And just for a precaution, I also shut off. This is the pipe, the return pipes upstairs and downstairs. I shut those off. I got a lot of valves, but really the whole point was just to isolate this. And once I isolated this, no pressure, I could unscrew this, put the new one back on, tighten it up, and then put back all the valves, turn them all back on, including your expansion tank, and boom, the system works great. It took all of about 2 minutes, and that was because I didn't know what I was doing. And I'll show you what the inside of this looks like. Alright guys, so this is my old SuperVent, and this is my new SuperVent. And as you can see, they're very simple. I mean, this screws right off. That little, I don't even know what you call it, cover really. This unscrews. And this is your valve right in here. This is the needle I was talking about right here. You can see that. Let me move that out of the way. This is the needle, and that goes up and down with the float. The float sits in there with that needle in it and simply rides up and down and moves that needle, opening and closing the vent. This is my old float, and as you can see, this thing's in pretty bad shape. Let's see if I can focus this. This thing is all cracked as opposed to the new one. It's all cracked and it got waterlogged. I tried to put some super glue on it and see if that could, you know, block up all the cracks and everything. And I thought to myself, for $35, what am I, crazy? I mean, this thing really is kind of cheap enough where you just buy a new one, and like I said, it took me 2 minutes to put it on. And so that's basically it. This float, it just rides up and down with the needle right in there. This would open it, that would close it, and that's how these things work. And this is the replacement kit, and it's 2 minutes. The only thing you have to remember to do is, I don't know if you can see, but right in here is an O-ring. Just make sure you put some liquid soap around that O-ring, drop it into place, and then just screw it down nice and tight, and you're going to have a SuperVent that works like a charm. No more air in the system, and it'll purge all the air out, and you'll be good to go. You won't even have to bleed your system. Alright fellas, thanks for watching.